Now I will introduce three important terms which include history, memory, and histography, which are very important to understand critical discourse analysis in relation to historical accounts. And I would also try to share some thoughts how they could be helpful in future studies about CDS related to historical accounts. Histography focuses on the construction of historical accounts or historical discourse, and while doing so, histography uses various tools, including the tool of representation, which is seen as a key issue in the construction of discourse about the past. What kind of representation are given to various individuals? Are they with agency or not? Or what kind of representations are given to certain events? What place of importance they have been allotted? All these issues are very important in this art of histography. People construct events that occurred in a different time, and in that process, we are able to gauge the difference between present and the past, and therefore we can analyze different kinds of social practices which affect the meaning making process in various eras, various times. Historiographical work make easy to understand the relation between meaning, therefore, which has become an object, and the meaning which today allows it to be understood as such. So something which has been stereotyped as a part of some past event or practice, and how it could be understood or reinterpreted in the present also. Mariana has defined or explained the concepts of memory and history. For him, memory is connected with our lived experience, what we have lived, and is a part of our experience. We can provide testimony for this. History is more related to the formulation of this experience into a scientific discourse, how we relate this testimony to various events in our life, how we shape it in the overall broader spectrum of our life. He further claims memory attempts to be faithful to the past, while history aims to be truthful about the past. At the representational level, there is also a difference in the space and time in relation to these concepts of memory and history. Memory represents lived time and space. I was there. You actually have seen something happening, so that is a part of your memory. You lived that experience. While history represents the locus of enunciation of the historian, how a historian have seen it or experienced it or listened to it. A historian might say someone somewhere did something. He might have an indirect account of something. Memory is focused on the continuity of an event and experience, where history foregrounds change and the reasons for change, why certain thing happened, and what kind of forces were behind that happening. However, both discourses serve to show the dialects of understanding the present, understanding the present through the past and past through the present. So, by utilizing both these forces of memory and histography, we can construct such understanding which can help us peep into past through present or present through past. Our position as the one remembering or making history shapes the meaning of the past we construct, and obviously that can be useful in our present also. Memory and history are related in various other ways also. For example, memories constitute the raw material for the construction of historical discourse. The testimony becomes the document by indexing a past that is larger. In simple words, we can say that memories are those raw materials, maybe memory of the historian or somebody he has listened to, which provide some impetus to create a concrete, substantive historical account, historical discourse, which would be analyzed or maybe analyzed in future also. So it is a way, both when combined together, build a connection between the present and the past. Similarly, history uses those reconfigurations of testimony as documents to extend the remembering process and correct it. It also, by combining various accounts of memory, tried to correct the construction of an event. There is also the transformation that memories undergo the historical operation, combine documentation, explanation, and representation. So, while constructing a historical account, we also take all these phases of documentation, explanation, and representation. This process includes choices and interpretation throughout these operations that are determined by the location of the historian. The historian, he may be relying on history or any other thing. He would be going through all this process of documentation, explanation, representation, and these processes would be affected by his choices and interpretations, how he takes a certain event. And then taking a critical perspective on historical discourse requires us to connect history to its place of production. It's not possible that we create any cognizable, understandable historical account without relating it to its context in time and space. These places of production produce silencing effects. They create huge impacts on and sometimes hidden impacts on the production of certain things, or also on the process of meaning making in the present. Historiographical research is produced from certain socioeconomic, political, or cultural locations. When we want to look at a certain event from a certain perspective, we try to produce the historiographical researches or accounts. Historical knowledge is constructed through semiotic practices that allow the interpretation of traces as indexes of social meaning. So by decoding those semiotic practices, may be verbal or otherwise, or many other models, it helps us to reach the social meaning. Some historians' practices provide a systematic method that allows the identification of change. They employ a very systematic process of taking help from various modes. As I said earlier, maybe verbal, visual, or maybe even in verbal, maybe oral or written. They would resort to various accounts. Looking at the past at different time scales enables us to explore the dialectic nature of our historical experience, not only individually but also as collective beings, being a part of a society or a community. The principle of variation of scales allows historians to show how different scales provide various details and levels of complexity. An historical account can be developed, can be produced at different levels, and it depends. Different scales to develop these levels, and different kind of information would be needed. But these scales of variation can be helpful in developing a deep account of history. The variation of scales allows us to focus on micro as well as macro history, and therefore it helps us to reach to different perspectives about the meanings and the different information about reaching the meanings of the past. History recognizes what continually changes and what is new by knowing conventions within which lasting structures are concealed. So history let us know some hidden structures which are not known to the present times, but they may still be effective in producing certain meanings indirectly, and thus it helps us. These scales work as a conceptual metaphors and help us knowing our meanings in the present. The understanding of historical time as a form of consciousness enables us to think of individuals as historical beings with some kind of agency. And this obviously gives us a gateway to look into the making of our societies in the present also. And therefore, by developing such critique based on historiographical research, we can devise practical plans to make our present better as compared to the past.